Let's talk about this match with John Cena and Triple H. I mentioned that this is the 50-50 response era for John Cena.
Mhm.
And a lot of the guys are, of course, behind Triple H, but the women and children, well, they're big John Cena fans. And when these guys are exchanging punches, whenever Triple H hits a blow, yay. Whenever John Cena hits a blow, boo. And Meltzer would write, that stuff started in Japan in giant Baba comedy matches, and guys like it because it's an easy Pavlovian reaction. But to me, it takes the edge off the intensity. I guess I never really thought about that, but that makes sense to me. If we're focused on yay and boo, we're not really suspending our disbelief that this is a fight, right?
I mean, not really. It's crowd participation. So, however the crowd is participating, they're involved in the match and they're invested in the match. Thank you. Um, again, that's up to the performers to gauge that and take that crowd out of that or bring them into it. Either way, but the fact that they're reacting is great.
They're reacting pretty big here when Cena's going to go to a second pedigree attempt and into the STFU. Yeah, Cena's even hitting pedigrees here, but Triple H makes the ropes. Eventually, Cena's going to power out of the crossface, get Triple H on his shoulders, hits the FU. Triple H is starting to elbow Cena in the head, hits the pedigree. That's the pin. Meltzer would say it was real weird after because Lawler started pushing. Then it looked like Cena had torn his pec. You could tell by how he was saying it that it was a fed backstage line. I guess either they feared he really had, or more likely, they wanted Cena to have an excuse for losing. The next day on TV, it was never even acknowledged. 3 3/4 stars. I know there's the old adage of let's send them home happy. We didn't do that here. I mean, I guess maybe to the live crowd, there was a pro Triple H audience, but he's the heel, by God. Cena's the baby face. How do you decide when's the right time or when's not the right time? Is it all just based on the story?
It
Or do
is
you
all
have
based
to
on
know?
story.
Okay.
Yeah, look, it's based on story and where you want to go, and a one night crowd reaction is not going to necessarily change, especially in that moment. If that crowd reaction continues on and on, maybe you're going to look at it differently. But the fact that the audience was strongly invested in John Cena, loving him or hating him, was clearly evident. He got reactions. They cared about John Cena. And you also have to care about the fact that he was the number one merchandise sales every single night by
Right.
far. Like nobody else is even close to him. So you look at that and you weigh that, and enough of that audience is clearly behind him and supporting him in every way, and they're voting with their dollars by their coming to see him, and they buy his merch and they support and or boo him. Regardless, they care about him and they're invested in him, and that's what's important.
Let's do some questions here and then we'll put a button on this episode.
You're
Quick
a button.
207 says, with the rebranding of ECW not going as well as hoped, what were the thoughts on how to make it the best product you could? I mean, I know you guys had to have 1,000 meetings about this, but when you first are trying this, it doesn't seem to be getting any traction the way you may have originally hoped. Is there any crazy idea you remember being considered for the ECW brand, or was it DOA and just going to limp along till the end?
I mean, you're asking me, and so I still am of the opinion that if there were that many people that cared about ECW, and yes, people that care are very vocal and very loud, then it would have still been in business. There just weren't enough people that cared about that old brand, and you're reviving. Paul Heyman said it himself. You're trying to revive a dead brand, and it's you're trying to resuscitate this dead brand that nobody cared about. I believe, especially in hindsight, that focusing on Raw and SmackDown only, it's like the presidential election. You have two candidates. You have a choice, versus you throw in an independent in the middle of that. it makes everything smaller. So I just don't think that the ECW brand was destined for success.
Deluxe Jam 89 says, with Kofi Kingston's first match on the Raw brand, it was beating Chris Jericho here. Could you see the potential of Kofi, and why do you think it took so long for him to get a shot at the WWE title, which many people wouldn't think of, still got fans, but didn't push it? Not really sure I followed the end of the question there, but Kofi, man, he's been with WWE forever. This was a big opportunity for him here. When did you see the upside in Kofi?
I saw the upside in Kofi the first time that I talked to him in Championship Wrestling from Florida, or Florida Championship Wrestling, whatever the hell it was. And I talked to him and saw the light in his eye and his love for this business. It was, it was different. You talk to Kofi, whether just you talk to Kofi, you can't help but like him. And then you can't help but feel energized about him. And he is such a positive human being that, yeah, man, I literally saw it the very first time that I met him, and the first time that I got a chance to sit down and talk with him at depth as to, why do you want to be in this business? What are you looking for? What's your end game? Where do you want to be? And that he just impressed the hell out of me.
What can you tell us about, when we're taking a look at where CM Punk was on the roster here? I mean, he's Mr. Money in the Bank, or at least flirting with the idea. What was his perception, do you think, backstage at the time?
I think Punk's perception backstage during this time was, look, there was still a lot of skepticism about Punk. He had his detractors and he had his fans. I think that there was also still a lot of confusion as to who exactly CM Punk was. And those, you're in a very stereotypical environment in which you're surrounded by a group that, it's alpha males that like to go out at the end of the night and have a few beers and by God, this is the way you do it. And somebody come in that's different, man, they're different, so they don't fit in. And Punk was different, but there was something about Punk. There always was something about Punk. And if you got his story and you understood why he's straight edge, you understood why he acted the way he did, why he had the tattoos he had, who he was and how he felt, then you go, okay, I may not get this guy, but I have a much better understanding as to who he is. So I think there was a lot of confusion backstage. And I think that the camps were probably split 50-50.
I bring all this up because the very next day, we're doing a Monday Night Raw from Oklahoma City. And that's where we would see CM Punk get his title shot and win the world title. And it happens the night after Night of the Champions. Is that the result of the way just all the shuffling happened for the draft?
What do you mean?
Well, just thinking, how the Raw champion was Triple H, but he's now on SmackDown. So now we've got to have a championship on Raw. CM Punk gets the nod. Is that
freshening it up?
Yeah.
Doing something new. And I think there were a lot of proponents of that and just as many non.